Bowie has died. He was 69 years old and he'd been suffering from cancer for about 18 months. Well, over a career spanning 4 decades, he continually reinvented himself and his music, from the alien rock star Ziggy Stardust to the Thin White Duke. He also starred in 3 feature films and, of course, pioneered the use of videos to promote his music. Mark Ratcliffe looks back at his life.
Not only is it the last show of the tour, but it's the last show that we'll ever do.
When Bowie made this announcement in 1973, many in the audience assumed he was quitting music. But it was only his alter ego Ziggy Stardust who bowed out that night.
This is ground control to Major Tom.
It was just the first of a series of changes of persona which would both entrance and bewilder his fans. Born David Jones in South London, he performed both music and mime before a psychedelia-tinged folk number gave him his first major hit. A subsequent album, Hunky Dory, spawned this hit single, with what was to become a trademark video. But it was the incarnation of Ziggy Stardust, the androgynous bisexual rock star from another planet, which brought him star status and broke him in America.
Ziggy played guitar, jamming good with weird.
I felt really comfortable going on stage as somebody else, and it seemed a rational decision to keep on doing that. And so I got quite besotted with the idea of just creating character after character.
Time is waiting.
A move to America brought Bowie into contact with the New York art rock movement and performers like Lou Reed and Iggy Pop. It also introduced Bowie to soul music, and he redesigned his entire stage show mid-tour to reflect yet another change of direction.
If you take this assignment, you'll have complete authority.
His time in America also saw his first film role in The Man Who Fell to Earth, Nick Rogue's tale of an alien visitor. It was perfect casting.
Buy some of mine. Buy it? And it costs naturally.
Tiring of American excess, he moved to Germany, where he teamed up with the avant-garde musician Brian Eno. The result? 3 critically acclaimed albums that probably represent Bowie's most creative period. He also produced a series of innovative videos which helped fuel the MTV generation. Let's Dance became his most successful album, thanks to stylish videos for Let's Dance and China Girl, which turned both songs into top 10 hits. He was not, however, entirely comfortable with his commercial success.
Artistically and aesthetically, it was probably my lowest point.
I don't need any help. I've practiced walking for years.
His music career stalled in the mid-80s, although he won critical acclaim for his role as a prisoner of war in Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence.
I don't need that.
Musically, the decade ended with Tin Machine, a short-lived and critically panned 4-piece rock band. The 1990s saw a revival. He saw the potential of the internet to deliver music very early on, releasing his single Lies from the Earthling album as a download. It was another example of how this multi-talented performer was always ready to strike out in new directions and reinvent both himself and his music.
Now Ziggy play guitar.
The life and times of David Bowie. Well, an official announcement of his death was made on David Bowie's Facebook page. It said that David Bowie died peacefully today, surrounded by his family after a courageous 18-month battle with cancer. While many of you will share in this loss, we ask that you respect the family's privacy during their time of grief. His passing has been trending today on Twitter. David Bowie's son Duncan confirmed the news and says he'll be taking a break from social media for a while. Just hours after hosting the Golden Globes, comedian Ricky Gervais was also mourning the loss of his friend. He described the singer as his hero. And British Prime Minister David Cameron reminisced about growing up listening to the rock star's music, describing him as a master of reinvention who kept getting it right. British comedian Eddie Izzard had a suggestion. He thinks every radio station should play nothing but Bowie all day. And Tim Peake, the British astronaut, has tweeted from space expressing his sadness that the musician has lost his battle with cancer. Well, we can speak now to John Robb, the music journalist. It isn't just Brits, of course, who are shocked by this news today. He just seemed too young, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, even at 69, I mean, he just looked ageless, you know, he didn't look any... The recent publicity photographs, he didn't look any different than he did about 30 or 40 years ago. In fact, a lot of people were saying how great he looks in those pictures, which makes it an even bigger shock. And
was anything known about his illness?
No, he did have a heart attack on stage about 10 years ago. That's why he wasn't playing live. But if you listen to the album that came out 2 days ago, Black Star, there's a lot of there's a foreboding sense of death in the lyrically, and even about the music as well as darkness in it, that now in the context of his death, you actually go back to that record, it makes a lot of sense. So I think it was a record that was dealing with his oncoming death, and in a brilliantly dignified, and let's say quite a theatrical way as well, which is what he was so brilliant at.
And when was that recorded? Because amazing that he could have produced an album whilst obviously being very unwell.
Over the last few months, I mean, he can still make a record in that condition because it's a horribly slow death, only 18 months. So he'd have been doing it like piece by piece as he's coming towards the end. I think when it came out on his 69th birthday, and I thought that was a brilliantly sort of theatrical piece of anniversary, but it's kind of beginning and the end at the same time, isn't it? It's his birth and his death all dealt with in one record.
And how do you sum up the contribution of David Bowie to music?
Well, for my generation, people in their 50s, he was the master. He signposted the 70s, our decade when we grew up. He took pop music from the hangover of the 60s and he redefined it for a whole new generation, a whole new decade, massively influential. I get just about every musician, whether they know it or not, in that decade and sometime afterwards was touched by him in some way. I think it's just showing the possibilities of pop culture, where you could do so many different things with it, not just keep repeating yourself over and over. You know, the image changes, the music changes, also brilliantly convincing, each one of them. And, you know, even just name-checking other artists and showing that there's more to music than just his own career, you know, from Iggy Pop to Lou Reed to Velvet Underground to even bands like Mott the Hoople, all owe him a debt because he opened the door for them and put them into the mainstream. And that generosity of spirit, but also that kind of restless spirit, it was a profound effect on the creative people of my generation.
And just very briefly, an international star too.
Yeah, massively, all over the world. This is one of the biggest pop stars of all time. There's probably only about 10 in that kind of Super League. You know, might not have had like 40 years of non-stop #1 albums, but a lot of very big records, but also influential. The influence, you can't even measure how big his influence was on people.
John Robb, many thanks indeed for speaking to us. Just to mention that Midure from the band Ultravox, speaking to the BBC, has said, we are all still walking in his slipstream. It's impossible to say how much he's contributed, nothing, and none of us can compare to what he did and has done and the legacy that he has left for us all. Just one thought of many people remembering David Bowie, trying to take in the news, shocked that his death has been announced today from cancer.